Welcome to the Restoration Psychology Podcast. In this episode, Jason, Stacy, Dr. Pay, and Tyler continue on the topic of church consultation, expanding on different scenarios in which church consultation could be effective, why churches may be resistant to consultation services, and how church pastors, staff, and members can be more deeply understood by one another. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we hope you enjoyed this episode.
To the weary, the hurting, and the hopeful, welcome to the Restoration Psychology Podcast, where you're invited to rest, heal, and restore. We are doing another episode in our church consultation series. Last episode, we talked about kind of the why for a church consultation. Why is church consultation needed in our churches? This episode, we're going to address what church consultation is. What are the various reasons that a church might reach out for church consultation, or what are the things that we could help with? And then the last part of today is going to be what is unique about Restoration Psychology's approach to church consultation. So with that, let's talk about what church consultation is. Before I throw it over to you guys, I want to read our description of church consultation from the Restoration Psychology website, just to kind of get us a grounding here. Church consultation refers to the process of seeking expert advice, guidance, or support to address various challenges and opportunities within a religious organization or community. Churches and religious institutions often seek consultation services to enhance their ministries, improve organizational effectiveness, address conflicts, plan for growth, or navigate transitions. So, Dr. Pam, we'll start with you.
Sure.
You probably have the most experience, not probably, I think you do have the most experience amongst us here doing church consultation. I'd love to hear from you. What are some ways that you've seen this played out? What are some things that you've helped churches with regard to maybe enhancing ministries, improving organizational effectiveness? Is it addressing conflict, helping them with growth, or navigating transitions?
Sure. I've had a wide variety of different maybe referral questions that I could talk to. So some of the times the church consultation services will be basic things like how do we communicate well with our leaders, or how do we communicate, and a topic that comes up often is like how do we love somebody well and address difficult problems. I've done some things around exposure to children being exposed to sexual abuse from somebody within the church, and how the church should handle it, both with the person, the perpetrator, the victim, and then the church body. And I've worked on some churches talking about leadership structure or surviving after there was a difficult situation with a person in power. So it could be a narcissistic leader or somebody who has maybe misused their power, and that has inevitably hurt some people. So those would be some of the broad-based questions and things that I have helped churches navigate.
Yeah. How about for the two of you? What are some things that you think churches might seek this kind of guidance for, or maybe ones that you've been a part of?
Yeah, I think the classic kind of example that most churches reach out for outside support is when there is some kind of scandal per se, like some kind of sexual scandal within leadership, or some kind of moral failing. That's the classic one. That's the one where kind of in a couples therapy, it's an affair is what brings the couple in. That's kind of the thing that I think is oh no, we really need help now, and we scramble to get some support. And that's where I think we see a lot of that kind of thing happen. And I've seen and experienced around me churches reaching out for that reason, or it's some kind of character issue with the leader, and then there's a struggle between the pastor and then the elder team or the committee or whoever's the leadership structure of that church, and because of those kinds of issues, it's almost like they no longer can navigate that on their own, and it's resulting in the church dividing or falling apart per se. And so that's when they're we need to get someone else to help us with this issue.
Yeah.
And I think that's a part of where my frustration is, right? Because I think what Dr. Pei, you were kind of alluding to as well when it comes to just consultation questions is that it doesn't have to only be in a time of crisis, right? But what we usually see for when churches do reach out for consultation services or reach out for counsel or reach out with a question or have a problem is because it's in response to a big crisis or a big scandal or a big potential divide. And it's like, no, like, hey, you guys can use church consultation for simple questions too, right? It's like, hey, why don't you just come and ask for wisdom, right? Or at least a different perspective. Why not just reach out, right? And that's the part that's so sad sometimes, right? Because it's like, oh, there are things that we should be able to handle. I don't know if we mentioned this in a previous episode, but in a previous conversation that we've had, we've talked about the expectation or whether for ourselves or the others that have on us when it comes to the church is like, oh, we should be able to handle this, right? We can handle these small things, but when big things happen, when big crises happen, that's when we need to reach out for help. And it's like, no, right? Like, just consult. Like that's kind of what like the term consultation is, right? It's not just for big things, right? Or maybe we should be church advisors, maybe, right? Like, I just started working with a financial advisor because I have no clue what to do with my money, right? I'm not a money guy. And I will email and I'll bug, and again, it's like a professional relationship. Or if you have like a lawyer and you have them on retainer, right? You kind of ask questions, or a CPA, like all these things where it's like, this is so normal in a lot of different
other
areas.
spheres of life.
Like, why not how to run a church, right?
I think one of the key things that you're talking about is taking a model of prevention, not just intervention. Consultation services are very helpful and valid when there is a crisis, but to think like, how can we get one step ahead of the crisis and talk about healthy leadership, healthy systems, making protocols that would prevent some of these major crises to happen, or accountability systems and structured, or even some of the basic ones is like, how do we clearly communicate expectations and clearly communicate what we need from other people and address it when it's not happening, and to take a more prevention model, not just intervention.
Well, I think if you do that well, you also set a church up for, because like we mentioned previously too, we are all human. Right, we're we are susceptible to messing up and sin and moral failures. We're not expecting perfection, but if you have a system and a church and relationships and communication that's set up transparently, honestly, there's trust from church members to leadership to pastors, then how you handle these things is going to be actually go smoother. Yes, there you go. Also was not an English major, apparently.
Yes. I also think that there's some naiveness in the church, in all of us, that we should be able to do certain things because we love Jesus or we follow God.
If we pray enough.
If we follow the biblical principles, we will know how to run a church. And I think that there's some like naiveness in that, because the Word of God is very important, and it does give us some clear instructions of what we can do, but adding a different professional perspective to help us understand what that looks like practically, right, was helpful.
It also seems to not take into account that other things are also at play in how you interpret whatever scripture you come to, like, or your biblical understanding of something, like your emotional health is going to be a lens through which you read and understand whatever scriptures you're looking at.
The different glasses or lenses that we look and read scripture through.
You guys are making me think here, like, a lot of times churches will reach out to other churches when they're going through something, or pastors will reach out to other pastors if they're walking through something. Could y'all talk to maybe a little bit, like, that seems like a natural thing to do, but what might be like a problem doing that, and why might someone consider reaching out to a third party other than a church or another pastor?
I have so many thoughts about this, but I'm going to let somebody else go first, and then I'll pick up.
Well, I think a little bit less response to that, but I think why that happens, I'll add to that, and then we can kind of pop back to that
why
part.
They reach out.
Why they reach out. I think, especially with pastors, there is this like sense of only another pastor understands what I have to carry.
Sure.
And there is absolute truth to that.
It makes sense.
Right? Like only a pastor can truly understand what a pastor has to carry, and the weight and the burden and the calling upon that. And I think there is this interesting dynamic across ethnic groups, across denominations, where pastor to pastor, like, you get me, you know, like there's that kind of dynamic.
Yeah.
And there is a time and a place for that, right? Like how we connect with others because they understand our lived experience differently. There's a time and a place for that, but there's also a time and a place where that falls short too.
Sure.
Yeah.
I love that. By the way, I love that you started from the positive of that.
That's
before we started talking.
Stacey always starts at the positive.
That's right.
Tyler,
But there's both.
You were going to say something.
No, I was just saying I have nothing to say about it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't, not that I have nothing to say about this.
Sure.
I just don't have kind of that experience. I mean, like, I agree with Stacey. Right.
Yeah, why they do that. But I think going back to your question about like where could it actually, where can that actually fall short?
Yeah.
Right. Like where we need to look elsewhere too.
Now, one aspect I think is like, so in the definition that I read earlier, one of the things, let's say, was improve organizational effectiveness. Well, if you're a pastor that's living in Dallas, Texas, or you're a pastor that's living in Seattle, what is organizational effectiveness or the effectiveness of your church in those different contexts could be very, very different.
For sure.
Yeah.
So just because it's a pastor, it's like, yeah, you get my experience. Maybe you do, but maybe the effectiveness of your church may not be effective the same way. And especially if we start talking about global ministry, then we're talking about a whole nother layer of probably the advice isn't going to be all that helpful.
I think everyone just wants like a deeper understanding, right? Like we all want to be deeply understood without almost having to over explain or over justify, right? So like, I mean, that kinship almost of like, you get it, right?
Yeah.
It's easy, it's fast.
Yeah.
I feel like, right?
There's a lot of unspoken connection
Yes.
when pastors
You don't
talk
have to
to another
explain
pastor or
yourself.
somebody in ministry. I think that's very true. And there's a lot of beauty in seeking help and support from people who are in it with you. I think that model can be limited.
For sure.
So the example I can think of is I often see like somebody with cancer who will talk to another person who's kind of going through their first cancer journey, right? And somebody who's kind of gone through the chemo, maybe if they've seen the other side of it, can help maybe mentor or answer questions for the new person. And that's what I think it's like to talk to another pastor. It's so helpful to have that sense of like camaraderie. You've been there, you've done this, I get it.
Lived experience kind of thing, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And that is such a good thing to have, that like we're in this together mentality. The flip side to that is that cancer actually does not get treated fully without an oncologist or somebody helping you with chemotherapy. Or we also need to take a holistic perspective. A lot of the times on treatment teams now, we'll see a psychologist on staff or a social worker to help navigate some of the family dynamics and how the family is impacted when somebody is struggling with cancer. There might be a nutritionist on staff, right? So it's really helpful for us to think about all of these problems in a systemic way, that we don't just need people who've gone before us and gone through certain situations. We also need people who are outside of the system that can provide some insight into like, here's a different perspective to look at this, and what can we do together with the knowledge of all of the people around us to make the church the healthiest it can be.
Right.
You got something you want to add?
Well, I just want to add, like, church consultation is not the end-all be-all, right?
No,
it is a
for
small
sure.
part of the larger system. We're just another voice. Hopefully that's helpful, based on our own expertise and our own training and things like that we can bring to the table.
And our own biases and worldview.
Yep, absolutely, which for, can be helpful, can also be not, but also, like, let's just talk about it, right? Like, hey, like, how we're approaching, how we're gonna, like, our recommendations or what we see as like health or unhealth is gonna be, based on our own biases, our own experiences, but also like our own trainings and research and right, that kind of stuff too.
What are the various situations in, let's say, a church body, church staff, church leadership team, kind of thinking about all of those different parts of a church? What are some various situations that could be helped with church consultation?
So there's a lot of, that's a big
I think
question.
you're quiet because there's a plethora.
There's so many of them. And you asked a lot of questions in one question, so I'll try to think about some like real
what are the
life
challenges?
examples.
Yeah, that's good.
I think one of the biggest challenges I see is that when there is a crisis, there's a basic misunderstanding of one human to another. And if we were to kind of dissect what happened when the situation became really big, let's just say there's like a leadership problem. If we like take a step back and zoom out and dissect the problem, it all started with small communication errors or misunderstandings that piled up and piled up and piled up. So there's all this conflict and no repair, just lots of ruptures. And a lot of the times I hear it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? That some of these small things, like I try to let it go. It was not a big deal. And it turned into this really big deal because the problem wasn't addressed.
And the paper cuts just like stack up on top of one another.
Yes, and death by 1,000 paper cuts is
Sounds
awful.
painful.
It's so painful. And it's the accumulation of that kind of causes problems. So helping leadership structures or people working together talk about that and find better ways to repair is helpful, and to identify, because sometimes in our Christian context we want to be really polite and like not let things bother us, or be like, oh, he didn't mean it, or his intent was good, or her intent was good, and it can actually cause bigger problems. So I see that. The other thing I see a lot is that when there's a big scandal, like sexual misconduct, an affair, misuse of finances, there are probably a lot of small things that happened that led a person to that point. And it makes me curious about, like what happened to this person that led to this moral failing, and what happened in the church that we turned a blind eye multiple times, or we just chose to be ignorant about it. Because are we really in people's lives? Are we really keeping each other accountable? Do we have a culture of safety where people can talk about these things before it gets bigger?
That's me, you guys.
I don't remember the question.
Just what are the various challenges or various situations that church consultation could help with? I'll say one, because as you were talking, at the church I was at, it was common for us to, if there was like what you were kind of talking about there, like almost miscommunications that were mishandled, or they were had. Oftentimes we would end up sending one of those people to counseling and not like,
please go fix your issue. Essentially, right?
And I think it wasn't that was bad, in my opinion. It was just, it didn't really meet the full need of what needed to happen there. It was like, we need an outside party that doesn't have this vested interest in how this goes. This non-biased third party to sit and help us understand one another better. And instead what we often did was, I won't say always, but what we often did was send one of them off to counseling because they need some help. And so I think in some ways, like, that third party consultation service helps you understand one another, instead of just give this person help and we'll be good.
Well, and I wonder if there is this dynamic often in churches where some kind of issue, whether it's a character issue or a leadership disconnect or a moral failing, starts to come to light somewhere within the church, and the leadership is the first line of defense around that. And then, for better or for worse, I don't think that's always the intention, but there is this dynamic of like, how do we contain this? Like, how do we figure this out ourselves before it spills over and it causes more problems? But sometimes in doing that, it causes problems, right? And I think there is that dynamic of like, well, we need to figure this out ourselves. Or if we bring in a consultation team, this suddenly becomes much more visible to the church community, right? Like what we're doing. Does it make sense? Like, I wonder if that is one of the barriers
or the obstacles.
Versus if we send someone just to counseling on their own, like, well, that's confidential, right? Like we're handling it, but it can be done quietly almost, you know?
Well, then to differentiate, right, individual counseling for one person is not church consultation.
Correct.
If I were to draw kind of the comparison between individual counseling versus couples counseling or family therapy, we're trying to work with the system, right? And I think maybe a part of the fear that I sense is that if we are going to commit to church consultation, there's got to be a crisis, right? There has to be an issue that we're coming in for. It's got to be a big thing that we're trying to fix, which is why we need to consult someone, right? And it's going to be this intensive, right? Like either 6 months, 1 year intensive, assessment, diagnostic, follow-up plan, intervention, things like that. And I think what Dr. Pei is trying to also communicate is that it doesn't have to get to that point, right? We encourage premarital counseling for couples who don't get married, right? I say we, like, the church, typically that body. And then we also say, hey, even after you get married, like, continue to go to couples marriage counseling, because it doesn't just end there, right? And so in the same way for like churches, I think to what you've all talked about too, it's like there's like basic communication thing. Human relationships are complicated and hard, right? Bottom line. And so how do you continue to prioritize and value emotionally, spiritually, relationally healthy, okay, I used the wrong words there, emotional, spiritual, and relational health within your church body, between leaders, between congregation members, between like, just all of it.
I'm just thinking about a real live example of a church consultation that might be practical and helpful. And it was a short-term thing, but it was probably my first church consultation services provided to a church. And I say that because that same call has happened multiple times, right? So one, church is not alone. Many churches are kind of dealing with some of the similar things. So in this particular case, the youth pastor had called me because one of the students had said that an adult was inappropriately touching them. And the consultation question was, what do I do? And I said, well, we have to call Child Protective Services. But there was a barrier because the senior pastor of the church said no. Like, you can't do that. And if the youth pastor, you choose to do that, then you'll be fired, because the church should be able to handle all of these problems within the church. And don't you care about the church? And even this child's mom had called begging the youth pastor and the church not to make a report because it would complicate their situation. And the youth pastor was in a really tough position around, like, what do I do? Who do I honor? And we had to have a lot of tough conversations. And I even talked to the senior pastor, but we had talked about sometimes the most loving thing to do is actually the hardest. And we have to be a place, the church has to be a place to take seriously the law of the land. And that is to make a report. And for the youth pastor to think, do you really want to work in a church that is going to threaten you? And
your job,
because you are protecting a child. And I share this story because it happens all the time, like where pastors feel very stuck, like they know what the right thing to do is, but there's all these powers that be that might prevent them from making the right choice. The good news is that this pastor did make the CPS report, and the child was so thankful because they had said, like, I was so afraid to even say this out loud because nobody would believe me, and I was afraid nobody would protect me or advocate for me. And I think that that's really important for us to think about when we think about church consultation is, are we protecting the church? Are we doing the right thing for the good of the greater body? That hiding something like this would have been extremely damaging. And this is a common narrative that happens in churches all the time. That's why there has been so many scandals that have been hidden. I think the church is doing a much better job at handling situations like this. And through time and through history, it's like 15 years of doing this, the questions are different because the church is trying to handle situations like this better. But having some like professionals come in to help give some advice, not just legal counsel, but emotional health counsel too, would be helpful.
So just to run through maybe of lists, like, so it could be like pastoral health,
yes,
emotional health of like a pastoral team or a staff team, could be like cultural health of the church. That kind of made me think about that when you're talking about the systems again. Like oftentimes like culture is so
or
tied
like
to like, what is
issues.
the system, and then like diversity issues, like if you have like a diversity hire that's saying this is a difficult place to be, maybe that's a good sign to say, hey, let's get some outside help here to help us work through this. And then like, you know, we mentioned like church growth plans. I think that's oftentimes churches just handle that in-house and don't get much of an outside perspective on what would be a good church growth plan for us? Or when it comes to like discerning vision and mission, does this seem like this is a good vision or mission for our church? Those are just a handful of things. And as you mentioned earlier, there's plethora, and even within each of those, there's multiple aspects that could be explored in church consultation. So with that, what makes restoration psychology's approach to church consultation unique amongst some of the other services out there?
Well, I would say that we follow through with providing churches to work on emotional and relational health, right? And not just those two specific things. I think as individually, as a church consultation team, we value and prioritize a very holistic and systemic approach to health. But if I were to, I think, differentiate ourselves from like, okay, what does restoration psychology do? What can we do for a church? Of like, why would you want a church consultation team to help you with a church growth plan? It's to ensure emotional and relational health. Right? As
you're going through whatever that plan is.
Yep.
So honestly, there are not very many church consultation teams out there. So the uniqueness of this is that we're one of them.
We're offering something.
We're offering something. That the need is great out there, but there's actually not a lot of teams that do it. Okay.
Yeah.
And from the research I've done, there's less than 10. Okay, so we're in the top 10 of it. Okay.
Nice.
And my understanding about a lot of it is that some of the church consultation teams have like previous pastors or maybe legal counsel on their team, but restoration is unique because we also have mental health professionals who have worked with the church, love the church, been part of the church in either lay ministry or actually been pastors before. And that helps us to have a unique perspective because we also can help with emotional and spiritual health in that too. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes.
I think the other piece that I would add is that from the various church consult experiences we've had across the churches we've been involved in, often a lot of these groups are doing really good and important things. And often what happens is, a group comes in, talks to some leaders and does some of that investigate, like kind of work around piecing the issue, provides a report, and then gives that to the church. And that, from our perspective, is helpful, and it doesn't always help the church carry that out and carry that through. It's a little bit like getting a cancer diagnosis. Well, getting the diagnosis is the first part of it. It's sometimes the most shocking part. It's the most like disorienting part of it.
Right.
But we also can't just stop there. We have to do treatment now and figure out what's the best way to do treatment. And so part of our calling in our team is how do we help a church walk through that treatment process? How do we continue to follow up with them? How do we support them, whether it's from a mental health perspective or some other perspectives, to help them actually carry out some of these recommendations that they choose to want to focus on as a team, as a church. But how do we help them through that process of healing?
Accountability is a word that kind of comes to mind as you were talking there. That ongoing the ongoing care through mental health providers. Is that what is that the right mental health? Why does that not sound right? Oh well. Like the ongoing care through mental health providers is a benefit, but there's also just a benefit of like there's going to be someone who checks up with us
the continuity.
Monthly for the next year after they have sent us this report to see, are we doing something with it? Or is there something that's going on here?
And then hopefully the established relationship carries through too, right? Like it's not like a one and done thing where we don't just come in, do this 6 months, 1 year kind of like program and 10-7 then leave, leave churches hanging. Our hope is that all churches are emotionally, spiritually, relationally healthy.
And I would say the most effective church consultations I've been like privileged to be part of are the ones that have lasted 10 plus years. It wasn't that I went in and was asked to help with the crisis. I hope that's helpful. I trust that it is, but it's the churches I've been able to walk with through many, many seasons of life. To see if are we actually practicing the things that we say are important and that we've discussed. Those tend to be the most powerful in systemic change.
Any other maybe last thoughts before I wrap us up here? Things that are like right on the tip of your tongue with regard to church consultation, some of the various things that it could be helped by?
I think there's just so many different questions, or like what we would say are referral questions that people might have. And I would encourage you to read our website and to give us a call to ask your specific question. And we would be able to have a much more tailored approach to talk to you about, okay, here are different ways we can help navigate this.
I think the point or the purpose of this podcast was to kind of give some context and just some conversation about, hey, what is church consultation? How do we improve accessibility, right? How do we make this feel less of this enigma type of like service? And what is church consultation? Does it have to be this bad? It's like, no, right? It's like, we're just saying, hey, reach out, right? Ask a question.
We love to help.
We want to help. Our heart is for the church and for a healthy church that loves people well, and we also want to love leadership and pastors well and provide support in that area too. And I think, again, right, like asking the question is always the hardest part. And so hopefully this podcast and our conversation kind of makes it feel less scary. But also, again, to what Dr. Pei is saying, if you have a question, specific questions, right, like just reach out, right? Hopefully there's no harm or hurt there. And we can kind of give you thoughts or recommendations or just start a conversation.
That's me.
That's good.
Dr. Pei mentioned just a second ago, there's very few actual church consultation services out there. So that kind of makes us unique because we're offering something. And I would say there's a reason why there's not that many church consultation services, because it's not a viable business, because churches don't actually use it. So here's my encouragement, maybe. Let's change that. Let's do something different. Let's actually use the people that are around us who have been trained in ways that we're not to get the help that the bride of Christ needs.
Amen.
It's worth it. Jesus' glory is worth it. And I'm not just saying that because we're looking for money here or we need more things to do. We care about the bride. We care about the church. And there's very few churches that are actually getting help. So let's change that. We invite you to listen to further episodes. Thank you guys for joining us. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Restoration Psychology Podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you're seeking counseling or have any other questions, please contact us at restorationpsychology.com.